Candidates, we appreciate not only your presence, but also your commitment to serving your community. We recognize the time and effort it takes to run for office, and your efforts don't go unnoticed. As chambers of commerce, we are focused on the critical economic and business issues facing our region. Issues that impact both prosperity and quality of life and deserve attention this election. Our members, businesses of all sizes and sectors, are united by shared interest in economic growth and stability. Strong businesses depend on strong communities, and we urge all parties and candidates to prioritize the following points. Tax reform. We need to simplify Canada's tax system to support business competitiveness. Trade and tariffs. We need to protect Canadian businesses from U.S. trade threats and stabilize key sectors like manufacturing and agriculture. Connectivity. We need to improve rural internet and cell service to support business growth, safety, and tourism. Housing. We need to support affordable housing to attract and retain workers. Immigration and workforce. We need to ensure immigration policies help retain essential workers and fill local labor gaps. We encourage candidates to engage openly on these issues as our communities seek leadership that delivers practical solutions and fosters a resilient, inclusive future. By addressing these challenges, we can enhance quality of life, strengthen local economies, and ensure long-term success for our region and country. We look forward to seeing these topics discussed during the remainder of this campaign and to collaborating with elected officials moving forward. I'd now like to invite Chamber Ambassador Greg Keith Jr., who will be moderating tonight's discussion, to begin with a quick overview of the forum rules.
So I'm going to review the rules. Candidates will have 3 minutes to expand upon their political platform. The format of the presentation is at the discretion of the candidate. The timer will give a 30-second warning and ring a bell at the end of the allotted time. No candidate will be allowed more than their allotted time, and the chair will ask the candidate to be seated. During the question period, questions from the chamber will be asked first, followed by questions from the public. Members of the public will be asked to identify themselves and direct their questions to one or all candidates. All public questions must be submitted in advance and will be pre-screened for clarity, relevance, and appropriateness. The chair will aim to ensure each candidate has an opportunity to respond to the public questions. The chair will rule out of order any questions deemed inappropriate, offensive, and derogatory, or that would seem to attack the integrity of any candidate. The chair will rule out of order any person who unreasonably attempts to use question period as a platform for expressing a point of view on any issue. Answers to questions will be limited to 3 minutes in order to maximize the number of questions allowed. If each member of the public could ask only one question until all questions have been asked, then they may ask another. Candidates will each have 3 minutes after the question period to summarize their platform. The chair will have final jurisdiction on all matters. So I'm going to introduce the candidates. So we're pleased to welcome the candidates running in Funday Royal riding for 2025. Joining us this evening in alphabetical order is Bill Kudla of the Liberal Party of Canada, Rob Moore, Conservative Party of Canada, Alistair McFarlane, People's Party of Canada, and we also have Jill Stockton sitting in for Hans Johnson of the Green Party, who was unable to attend this evening's forum, has submitted written responses. Oh, sorry. So Hans Johnson has submitted written responses to the Chamber's pre-circulated questions. All registered candidates were invited to participate in this forum. Cindy Andrew, New Democratic Party, sent their regrets and will not be participating. To ensure fairness, the speaking order for tonight's forum was determined by a random draw conducted prior to the event. We will be alternating the order in which candidates respond throughout the evening based on that draw. This approach ensures that each candidate has an equal opportunity to speak first on various topics. So we're going to start with our first topic, which is taxes. Yes, so each candidate will have 3 minutes to speak on their platform, and through random draw, we have started with Alistair.
Works for the people rather than at their expense, and a candidate who cares about local issues more than the party status quo. Our country deserves better than what we have today, and I want to help us get there. I aim for bipartisan reform that will help protect our environment, our country, and our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Next will be Bill Cudley.
Hello, and thank you for coming tonight. I'm Bill Cudley, Liberal candidate for Funday Royal. I moved into New Brunswick 4 years ago after 6 trips here over the many years to teach health and safety. I realized this was a great place to be. It's calm, it's nature at its pinnacle, and the people are amazing in this riding. Anyway, I just felt my career as a union representative representing the most vulnerable people in the country with health and safety, with mental health, and with determining that I could make a difference. I got women into skilled trades by just pushing a little harder. And I promise that if I'm your representative, I will listen to each and every one of you and find a solution to your problems and your questions, and you will see me at many, many different events throughout the riding. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next we have Rob Moore.
Thank you, Greg. Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here with you. Number one, I want to thank the chambers, both the Sussex Chamber and the Hampton Chamber, for coming together to host this evening. It's important. We're blessed to live in a country that has a democracy, and that means each and every one of us gets to have their say. And we're able to have open debate and discussion while respecting each other. I want to, my fellow candidates as well, recognize them. I know the sacrifices that are involved in putting your name out there and being a candidate, especially now more so than years ago, the type of scrutiny that people are under. So anyone who puts their name forward and is willing to defend their ideas to the public deserves our admiration, and congratulations to both of you on your campaigns. It's an honor to be able to represent your riding, and it's an honor to be able to represent Funday Royal. I've worked closely with both Sussex and Hampton on many projects. If you look around Sussex, you'll see the Sussex Mural Project, the Civic Center, we have the Fundy Trail, and Hampton, the Courthouse Project. Those are all projects that I've been pleased to champion as your Member of Parliament. But right now, the pain that people are feeling is real, and we cannot afford another 10 years. And that's why I'm running. I'm running to help small businesses, to help families that are struggling to make ends meet. Just this morning, I drove by a food bank and saw people that were already lined up at that food bank. That's something that we've seen a growth in food bank use. We've seen a growth in poverty. We've seen a growth in crime. People feel less safe than they did 10 years ago. And that's why I'm running, is to protect the values of my constituents, to stand up for them in the House of Commons, and to ensure that we are as strong as we can be, both in our community here in Funday Royal, in New Brunswick, and indeed across Canada. I also want to recognize our member of the Legislative Assembly, Tammy Scott Wallace. Thank you for being here, Tammy, as well as my daughter, Caitlin, who's interested in politics. I didn't know whether to bring her to a debate because you never know at these things, but I'm glad that she, at least one of my family members, are interested in politics as well as me. So I look forward to the evening, the discussion, and thank you all for being here.
Now we have Jill speaking for Hans Johansson.
I'll be reading responses on behalf of Hans Johnson from the Green Party of Canada, who was unable to attend this evening's forum. These responses were submitted in advance by the candidate in reply to the Chamber's pre-circulated questions. Please note, the Chamber is a non-partisan, and these views reflect those of the candidate, not the Chamber or myself. I will read them exactly as provided without any edits or personal commentary to ensure their views are accurately represented. I put my name forward as candidate in Funday Royal because I believe that people of this riding deserve better. The current MP routinely ignoring constituents' needs and puts his party above the needs of this community. The Green Party believes that politicians can be done better. All Green candidates commit to putting the needs of their riding foremost, above party, above ideology, and above personal ambition. The members we have elected have consistently done so and been rewarded with re-elections in almost every case. People recognize the quality of the candidates that the Green Party attracts. The current climate of economic attack from the United States administration requires all parties to work together, benefiting Canada. This is one of the core beliefs of the Green Party and our vision of politics done better. But it is also crucial that we not forget the other important issues that are intimately tied to the trade wars and to each other, including affordability, housing, human rights, and climate change. There is no point in winning a trade war while sacrificing normal people's lives in the process. And make no mistake, each of these issues affect normal people. Climate change may be seen like a distant problem, but if we fight the terrorists by ignoring the current and future costs of climate change, eventually we all lose. We must fight sustainably. That means emphasizing sustainable energy rather than fossil fuels to meet the shortcomings caused by the tariffs. Oil and gas aren't going away soon, but neither should we react by unnecessarily expanding them when more sustainable solutions exist. So yes, we can find new sources for our current fossil fuel needs when necessary, but let's use this opportunity to reduce the need for fossil fuels. It will pay dividends even after this current tariff fight is over. As for me, I was born and raised in New Brunswick and attended the University of New Brunswick, where I earned bachelor's and master's degrees in computer science. In that time, I volunteered with an anti-poverty organization, kindling my interest in wealth gap and reducing it through policy. Growing up on a farm and in the woods gave me a love of nature, which as an adult turned into an interest in climate change and the absolutely terrible effects it will have on normal people and the economy. I came to be involved with the Green Party when I realized that none of the other parties were taking it as seriously as warranted. That belief remains in this day. In short, it's the economy. The economy cannot survive the coming devastations unless we change how we fuel it. The other parties chose short-term small savings for the economy when the long-term effects of inaction will be devastating. Real positive change is needed now, both to overcome the current crisis in tariffs, sovereignty, affordability, and climate effects, and to return the focus to the people as the engines of this country.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the questions that were prepared. The first one is on taxes, and so Canada's tax code has become increasingly complex and inefficient, placing a growing burden on businesses and hindering competitiveness. It hasn't seen a full review since before humans landed on the moon, and decades of patchwork changes have left it bloated and outdated. Now over 1.1 million words, or the length of an entire Harry Potter series, despite years of advocacy from the Chamber network. The system continues to worsen. Recent changes such as unclear guidance and shifting deadlines around the underused housing tax and capital gains rules have added significant administrative costs for businesses. What concrete steps will your government take to simplify the tax system and improve its effectiveness? So first we're going to Bill.
Our current government will facilitate building of homes. New Brunswick has a vibrant modular home business that we can train more people to work in it, use our own resources to build the homes, and get people into their first home at a much reduced price. I believe that the tax system does need to be revised, and it has been looked at many times by successive governments, and we will have those discussions again and try and make sure that people have an equal opportunity to be successful in this country. Our lower income Canadians really struggle, as even retirees, people with disabilities, or people that have not been able to attain a job in the field of study. They need to be supported until they can get on their feet, and our seniors certainly should not live in poverty after working their entire lives. So the tax system needs to be adjusted to help those folks. I also believe that for small businesses, you know, we probably wouldn't see a lot of our small business had the federal government not given the small business loans during the COVID period. They kept a lot of the restaurants you go to now just might not be there. So you have opportunities to have more variety and support Canadian jobs and restaurants and workplaces because of what was done during the pandemic. And we can stand against Trump together by utilizing those small businesses and keeping small businesses strong, because overall they hire and support more workers. Thank you.
Okay, next we'll go to Rob, same question.
The question on taxation. You know, it was 10 years ago when the current government took power that we really saw the Sussex Chamber and the Hampton Chamber step up. And that is because the current Liberal government said that basically small businesses were a bunch of tax cheats, and they changed the small business taxation rules. They made it more difficult, for example, for someone to sell a fishing business or a family farm to a relative and pass it on to a relative rather than selling it to a large corporation. We've seen a government that promised the carbon tax would be capped at $50 a ton, then shortly thereafter plan to raise it to $170 a ton. We were told that if you didn't support the carbon tax, you wanted the earth to burn, and that you didn't believe in the future, and you didn't believe in the environment, and that the only way to do these things was to cripple hard-working Canadians who are trying to make ends meet with a crushing carbon tax, which was set to go up on April 1st of this year. Conservatives have always stood for tax fairness. Conservatives have always stood for a simpler tax code. We fought against the small business tax changes. We fought against the carbon tax. And on the eve of an election, what do you know? The carbon tax that the current government said everyone was better off by paying it is now temporarily, I would say, reduced to zero as of April 1st. And I can tell you, I haven't had constituents complaining about this. I haven't had people saying, you know, I was better off when there was a carbon tax. People are very pleased to see it gone, but only a conservative government is going to ensure that the carbon tax doesn't come back. Only a conservative government is going to do away with other hidden carbon taxes that are within our system. Only a conservative government is going to be committed to not implementing the capital gains increases that the government had on track, and again, because of the election, they turned their back on their own agenda of the capital gains increase. That would have impacted many of the people here in this room. Canadians right now are spending, on average, $10,000 more in taxes than they were 10 years ago. Food bank lineups are growing. People are struggling to make ends meet. We need a government that is less greedy, takes less taxes, and that's why the Conservatives are committed to taking the GST off of new homes, making sure the carbon tax never comes back, and reducing your income tax. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Now we'll move on to Hans.
Reading on behalf of Hans Johnson, Green Party of Canada. Canada's tax code has become increasingly complex and inefficient, placing a growing burden on businesses and hindering competitiveness. It hasn't seen a full review since before humans landed on the moon, and decades of patchwork changes have left it bloated and outdated. Now over 1.1 million words, or the length of the entire Harry Potter series, despite years of advocacy from the Chamber. I think I'm reading the question. From the Chamber Network. we're going to continue on. A key part of the Green Party platform is to make our taxation more fair for the citizens of Canada by reducing the tax burden on those that cannot afford it and increasing the taxes on those who can. This also includes simplifying and dizzying array of subsidies and tax credits and ensuring that those that remain are all in the public interest. The Green Party has also proposed the creation of an independent federal tax commission to continuously review fairness in taxation. That form could serve as a vehicle for raising concerns such as shifting requirements and unclear guidance on taxation rules, since these also amount to unfair tax policy. As someone who works tangentially in the tax industry, I have witnessed firsthand how the CRA can shift requirements, all the while claiming that those were the requirements all along. I share in the frustration of business owners on these issues. That said, many of these taxation policies are necessary in order to make Canada a better place for ordinary Canadians to live. The underused housing tax is a tool to stop the speculation in residential housing, and the Green Party is proposing other tools that strengthen and expand on the concept as part of our commitment to ensure that housing is affordable for all Canadians. But there is no reason that such policies need to place an excessive burden on taxpayers who are simply trying to follow the rules.
Thank you, and now on to Alistair.
Since the 1970s, government spending and taxes have both been greatly expanded by both ruling parties, stifling economic growth and discouraging investment in our country. The past 2 decades in particular have seen Canada fall to 28th out of 38 OECD countries in productivity, averaging about 0.85% growth per year. Without radical change in government, we're expected to drop even farther in the coming decades to take a spot at the bottom of that list. The PPC is the only party with a real solution to fix this. Liberals plan to spend more. Conservatives plan to maintain our already unsustainable budget. But we want to slash bloated government spending to balance the budget and deliver real tax reform, not just promises of a few percent here and there. Things like simplifying the tax system for workers and reducing our 5 tax brackets down to 3 with the eventual goal of introducing a flat tax, coupled with increasing the basic personal amount from $13,000 to $15,000. We want to reduce corporate tax by 5% over a 4-year term so they can invest in automation, productivity, and competitive salaries for Canadian workers. The PPC plans to revitalize our stagnant economy by abolishing the capital gains tax entirely, which lowers investment, hinders the efficient use of capital, and discourages innovative ventures. Taxes must be lower for workers and business if we want to become internationally competitive and less reliant on trading partners like the United States.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to our next question, which is about tariffs. With the ongoing tariff threats from the United States, Canadian businesses are facing significant uncertainty, particularly in industries such as manufacturing and agriculture. These potential tariffs could lead to an increased costs, disrupted supply chains, and reduced market access. What steps will your government take to protect local industries, ensure the competitiveness of Canadian businesses, and mitigate the economic impact of these trade tensions? This time we're going to start with Rob.
So, to know where we're going, we need to know where we've come from. And where we came from in 2015 was a Canada with a balanced budget, a Canada with a low taxation regime, a Canada that had an energy east pipeline that would take our resources from Alberta, from the west, and bring them over here to New Brunswick to be refined and exported to the world. Opportunities unlimited, instead of selling our resources at a discount to the U.S. We know what happened shortly after the current government was elected 10 years ago. One of the first orders of business was the killing of the Energy East pipeline. The Energy East pipeline would have meant huge opportunity and insulation from the threats of the tariffs coming from the United States. There's a recent study done that said that of all the provinces, New Brunswick is the most vulnerable to the tariffs. And of all the cities in Canada, they looked at every city's vulnerability to the tariffs, and St. John, New Brunswick was the most vulnerable city. So the threat of tariffs is very real. We have to do more to ensure that we're in a position of strength. Coming at this from a position of weakness has hurt us. And Conservatives will strengthen our economy. Conservatives will encourage investment here in Canada. Conservatives will get pipelines built so that we have export opportunities right here in New Brunswick. It's Conservatives that have committed to eliminating the capital gains tax for investments that are made back into Canada. We have committed to a Keep Canada Working Fund to help those businesses who are hurt by the tariffs. So we have to return with strength. It would have been better if we were in a position of strength when this started. We all know how we got here. We had a government that didn't believe in Canada's opportunities, didn't believe in Canadian industry, didn't believe in Canadian resource development. We saw 16 major projects that were killed over the last 10 years that would have insulated us from the threats of these tariffs. So we will defend Canadian sovereignty. That is not at issue and it's not up for debate. But we will make sure that Canada can take on this situation from a position of strength. And that means empowering people like yourselves to invest and reinvest back into Canada.
Now we'll move on to Hans.
Party of Canada. The entire response to the current illegal U.S. tariffs is too long to address here, and I suggest that people read the section of the GPC platform. That said, some key and unique proposals include creating strategic reserves of key industry inputs in order to smooth price fluctuations in volatile times where tariff regimes change seemingly daily. 2, committing to help transition to processing Canadian raw materials at home rather than shipping to the U.S. for refinement. 3, using export taxes on key U.S. industrial inputs as a further tool to pressure the U.S. to desist. And 4, coordinating responses with Mexico and other key U.S. trading partners to ensure minimal disruption to Canadian allied economies while maximizing the pressure on the U.S.
Thank you, and now we'll move on to Alistair.
Whereas both major parties have played right into Trump's hands with tariffs, with their rhetoric and escalated tensions and economic uncertainty in our own country, the PPC position has been unchanged from day one. We want negotiation, not tit-for-tat retaliation. Tariffs are a tax on Canadians. A liberal plan to put tariffs on U.S. products will make grocery bills even less affordable for Canadian workers. And the Conservative pledge to impose tariffs on U.S. steel and aluminum will send hundreds of jobs from our riding south of the border and raise prices across many key industries for our area. Rather than further tax Canadians and redistribute the money, I want to encourage people to buy and hire Canadian with incentives, not punitive measures. I also want to take this opportunity to call upon the main party candidates to renege on the self-destructive pledges to impose tariffs that will burden Canadian businesses and consumers, and put our country first by engaging in diplomacy on our behalf rather than at our expense.
Thank you. Now on to Bill.
After Mr. Carney was elected to the position of leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, became our Prime Minister, he went to Europe. He talked to the European leaders, and Japanese leaders were present at the meetings, and together they agreed to threaten Trump with taking their treasury bills and dumping them. They had trillions of dollars in treasury bills, and it would have crippled the American economy. Donald Trump then gave a 3-month pause on tariffs. So Donald Trump can be only dealt with. He's a bully. He can only be dealt with by swift, strong action, and Mr. Carney is definitely the man to do that. He's proven time and time again that he can help us through economic crisis, help Britain through Brexit, and then also manage a corporation. So Mr. Carney and will be proud to serve in his government as a just regular working person, that's worked my life and made ends meet from one week to the next, I think that we can certainly find that there's more opportunity to fight Trump tariffs with Mr. Carney, because I haven't heard anything from the other parties publicly yet about what they will do. And I would really trust that Mr. Carney can handle the tariffs. He's got a united front behind him. And as Mr. Moore said, Canadians are resilient. Canadians are strong. My grandparents told me the stories of Second World War years, and my mom's family as well, that they got by sharing with each other and taking care of each other. And as Canadians, we need to learn that our neighbor is our neighbor and take care of our neighbor. We need to learn that somebody down the street that's hurting is somebody who needs our help. So if we have, we share. And we can work better that way and make Canada strong. And we'll fight the terrorists by growing our own food here, by supporting the food industry and farming industry. Having spent my summers on a farm, I know how much work it is. It's hard work, but they need to be encouraged and they need to be protected, and they need to have the financial supports in to have more energy efficient equipment on the farms. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question is on telecommunications and broadcasting, internet, phones, and TV. So despite the federal government's 2019 report and ongoing investments, businesses in our region continue to face issues with inadequate internet for remote work and limited cell service that affect tourism and safety. If you can please provide an update on progress since the report and outline any future plans to ensure reliable connectivity in underserved areas. So we're going to start off with Hans.
On behalf of Hans Johnson, Green Party of Canada. It has long been GPC policy to improve access to broadband for rural areas and other underserved communities, and that still features in the party platform for this election. One of the often overlooked reasons for this that ties into climate change is that proper internet access is a requirement for teleworking, which has dramatic effect on carbon emissions and other pollution. One unique platform policy that the GPC is proposing is to expand Canada Post's mandate to provide internet hubs for small communities. This is something that the Canadian Union of Postal Workers has been proposing for some time, but Canada Post Corporation appears uninterested in serving Canadians in this way, or indeed in making Canada Post an economically viable entity.
Thank you. And next, we'll get Alistair to answer the question.
I had to do a fair bit of research into this because I'm not particularly familiar with our telecoms industry, but the update requested, I'd like to point out that last year when I did a speed test on my internet, I was about 6 megabits per second, and now I'm a bit below 5. So I understand what it's like to live in a rural community and not get high-speed internet. Personally, I believe that we have to end Canada's telecoms oligopoly, where we have 3 or 4 major players controlling everything in the country. I believe the CRTC must be reformed to increase competition and let the free market fill the gaps in our country. More competition means more incentive for lower prices and wider service. We already have infrastructure sharing in place. Network investment in our country is among the highest in the entire world, and yet only 37% of rural households have high speed. Like I said, I don't. We need to decrease regulatory hurdles, eliminate and avoid regulations that are going to stifle innovation and investment in this industry, because robust and secure telecoms networks are important to our future, as our self-reliance as well. I'm also just like to take a moment to say I'm surprised that this was the question asked and nothing related to natural resources or the cost of living crisis experienced by so many in this community.
Thank you. Bill?
So our telecommunications and internet services are appalling in the rural areas of this province. There's so many times I'll talk to somebody and be driving down the road and the call's suddenly dropped. In some cases it could be a senior trying to call 911, and if that phone drops, then they don't get the service they need, or it might cause catastrophic results because of it. So we need to really consider putting towers And we've got all these windmills around. We can use the windmills as a secondary source to put telecommunications booster stations on to make sure that people can actually have the telecommunications they require for their safety, for their education, for reaching out to family members across the country. There's no reason at all why rural New Brunswick should be shut out of the telecommunications industry. And Bell, Rogers, the two big players who've swallowed up most of the other smaller ones, need to be held accountable for what they're doing. I believe that our government must stand stronger against the monopolies in any industry in this country to make sure that the competition will bring in better rates for people and better services. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
Yes, particularly in the context now of the affordability crisis that we're facing over the last 10 years. This is not a luxury for the businesses, the small businesses in the riding of Funday Royal, and yet we are tremendously underserved. And there was a story someone was telling me recently, reminded me of, that illustrates the problem that we have here in Canada. It was the Liberal minister who made the promise to reduce the Canadians in 2020. He was going to force companies to reduce their rates by 25%. Within 3 years, that same minister was working for Rogers. So we know the game that is played now, where sometimes the only way to get a reduction on your bill is to threaten to leave one of the others, and then they'll, at that point, do everything they can to keep you with them. So in this area, this is not just a matter of the desirability or the ability to attract business, the ability for people to work from home, the ability for businesses to set up in certain areas of the riding. It's actually an issue of life or death when we've had individuals who've not been able to get the help they need due to a lack of coverage. So Conservatives have been pushing for more transparency in what is advertised from these companies, but ultimately to solve this problem, we are going to need to have more competition. We're going to have to allow the opportunities for others to serve underserved areas. And we're going to have to introduce, like we have in so many other markets, the idea of increased competition and end the protectionism that is allowed for this situation to continue for way too long. The government committed it would be solved, but even now today, there's many areas, and we all know them. You'll say, oh, I was just driving through so-and-so, and that's why the call dropped. And it happens all over, and it shouldn't be happening now. There's no reason for it. And it certainly has contributed to the affordability crisis, as people are looking at everything increasing. Their tax bill, their gas, their heat, their mortgage, and now their telecom bills. So this is something that Conservatives are committed to addressing. And we're going to do that by helping to solve the affordability crisis and increasing competition.
Thank you. So moving on to our next question, which is on housing. So we recognize that housing primarily falls under provincial jurisdiction, but the federal government plays an important role. Employers in our region are struggling to attract and retain staff due to lack of housing, with some workers facing long commutes or turning down jobs. While we acknowledge that most political parties have outlined plans to improve the housing situation, the shortage remains critical. What specific actions will your government take to address the housing crisis and support a more sustainable market for both residents and businesses? So we'll start with Alistair on this one.
As your candidate, I want to work with municipalities rather than force them to abide by one-size-fits-none federal housing strategies. The Housing Accelerator Fund should not be tied to blanket zoning approval for multi-unit residential. A PPC government will respect local municipalities' authority in housing and not subject them to financial pressure to densify. The fact of the matter is, Every year since COVID, the population of New Brunswick has grown by almost 25,000, whereas housing starts per year hovers below 5. It is out of reach for many people in New Brunswick, and for many reasons. And there is no build 500,000 or build 1 million houses per year solution. It's been promised before with no results. The solution to our housing crisis demands a holistic approach and strategic vision beyond slapping band-aids on the status quo. To cool down the market and make home ownership attainable, we have to tackle inflation and mass immigration, as well as work with provinces to curb real estate speculation and rent farming by foreign buyers.
Okay, now Bill.
The housing crisis has come about because of the situation we allowed ourselves to get in by having U.S. purchasing our steel, aluminum, and lumber, and taking away resources that we could use here. Mark Carney has a plan to build up to 500,000 homes, take the GST off new homes under $1 million, and that will enable us to build more, get more people in them. When I was a kid, I lived in a little wartime house with 3 brothers, and we stayed there till we had a sister. We moved into another home, but we built equity, and if families can start in a smaller home, we can build them for them, and they can get some equity, and they have the ability to move up to a bigger home once they pay down their mortgage. I think that's the way a lot of us have gone through our lives. We didn't start with a big home on the river. We started with a smaller home in town. So I think expectations is a big thing. And a lot of it is when we teach our kids that they can have whatever they want, yes, they can. But some things take time. Some things we have to be patient for, we have to work for them, and we maybe buy a old fixer-upper. I don't hear fixer-uppers much anymore, except I heard it from Alistair today. And you fix up the house, you build equity in it, and then you can sell it and move to another one. And I did that with 3 houses as well. Fixed up 3 houses so I could afford to pay for one. I believe that Canadians will have the resources they need, by building more houses, getting more skilled trades involved, working in conjunction with the provincial government to get skilled trades in the schools and more skilled trades here, so we're not importing them. The importing skilled trades from other countries is basically raping and pillaging their education system. We need to improve our education system across the country so that we have our own skilled trades and everything else that we're lacking, nursing, doctors. We need to strengthen our education system. That will be the way we solve all of the problems, but the housing crisis will be solved by getting more skilled trades, using our local lumber, using our modular home building facilities, and getting people working again in this province. Thank you.
Okay, now on to Rob.
Well, the numbers are staggering, and it's alarming to see Mr. Carney promising some of the same things that were promised 10 years ago by the current government. They didn't work over the last 10 years, quite the contrary, and they will not work in the future. The cost of housing for many Canadians, the Canadian dream of getting a job, working hard, and being able to afford a down payment on a house, the Canadian dream of maybe your kids doing better than you did, that is being lost right before our eyes. Rent in Canada in the last 10 years has doubled. Mortgage payments have doubled. The amount required for a down payment has doubled. The cost for you, from what you make on housing, was 39% of your income 10 years ago. Now it is 60%. And in spite of Canada having so much land and so much wood, we have the highest housing inflation in the G7. Why is that? It's because of the failed policies of this current government. A measurement of 35 countries by the OECD found that Canada also has the second slowest permitting process for projects. So we need to do things differently. We need to empower entrepreneurs. We need to have young people being provided the training that they need to do the work that is required. We cannot continue on the path that we are on. Canada has some of the highest cost housing in the world now, and all of us know stories of individuals who have been priced out of their communities. Many of you who own a home or bought a home when you were younger, you know that in the same scenario today, you wouldn't be able to have that opportunity. I've had many of those discussions when I go door to door. One individual told me, he said, you know, Rob, I would not be able to afford this house anymore. Thank goodness I was able to do it 10 years ago when I bought. I wouldn't be able to do it now. Now, they do say that imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and several of our proposals are now being imitated by the current government around the capital gains, around the carbon tax, and we also see the Conservative commitment to take the GST off of new housing builds up to $1.3 million, as well as taking the GST off of rental housing. This will help encourage investment. It'll help get houses built. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach that's being proposed right now. It's something that will work in all of our areas, and it's going to make the idea of home ownership more possible for young Canadians.
Okay, and moving on to Hans.
Party of Canada. Although you are correct that housing is primarily a provincial responsibility, traditionally the federal government has also played a key role. The Green Party plans to return the Government of Canada to its roots in housing. We would build permanently affordable homes with an aim to triple Canada's social housing stock over the course of 7 years and return the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation to its roots of financing and building non-market housing directly. We would mandate the CMHC to establish prefabricated housing plans to slash construction costs and create jobs, and then provide long-term, low-interest loans to nonprofits, co-ops, and public housing agencies to cut out private lenders and accelerate development. As someone who was lucky enough to get into the housing market before the current affordability crisis, one would think that this would be a low priority for me. Far from it. I have great compassion for the younger generation who may never have the opportunity like I did to attain that part of the Canadian dream and own a home. My own children are affected by this. My youngest child is now almost the age where I bought my first house. Meanwhile, even my oldest, who is well over that age, still has no prospects of buying anytime soon. They are trapped paying rent that doesn't allow them any opportunity to save toward a down payment, with corporate landlords benefiting from the housing market while they have no access to a home of their own. This must change.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. So this question is in regards to immigration. Local employers have relied on immigration programs to fill critical employment gaps, but with recent changes to immigration numbers, employees who have been contributing to our economy may now be unable to apply for permanent residency and could be sent home. While we understand the need to manage immigration numbers, what measures can your government take to address this issue and support both businesses and workers who are integral to our local economy? So we are starting this question with Bill.
Well, I think we're all aware of how critical immigration is to maintaining a good workforce in this country. We've had, since before, the turn of the century, we had Indian people coming to help us from India, working on the railways, Chinese working on the railways. We had Eastern European influx before and after the Second World War. We've had lots, of course, British right through, all the time, but we need to have a balanced system of immigration that can be absorbed by the housing, infrastructure, healthcare system, and all the support systems that we have in this country. I saw last week when I was canvassing in Sussex, a family being moved in by the kinsmen. They were helping provide furniture and kitchen supplies. And you know, those jobs, a lot of them used to be taken care of by community organizations and churches, and we've seemed to lost our way in taking care of people. Our church used to do so much more for people they don't now, and maybe it's somewhere that the government doesn't need to be fully in control of, taking care of new Canadians. We need to have the housing, of course, to support the new Canadians, but we also need to make sure that the jobs are there for them, and when people come in with skills, that we need to respect those skills and get them working. They shouldn't be taxi drivers when they've got a medical degree from a British Commonwealth country. So I would really like to see more change as far as how we assess people coming into the country. They don't need to go through a full degree program again to become a doctor or a nurse. They could maybe have a kind of apprenticeship with another doctor, where they work alongside them and be assessed as they're working. So immigration, again, is extremely important for our fishing industry, our farming industry. The we don't clean our own lobsters anymore. We have people come in and do it, and we need to make sure that those people can still come and do it, because our people just don't want to do that work. And I did it last year, so I know what it entails. It's a tough job, but you need to you either do it or, you know, I didn't need the money, so I did it just as kind of to see what it was like. But it's important for us to have the immigration to support services and support small businesses and large businesses alike, to make sure that they have the personnel to do the work, and we can maybe get some kind of temporary housing set up for those people who come in as temporary foreign workers. Thank you.
Okay, now on to Rob.
Well, this has been a general theme, but I guess what we're being asked to do this election is to pretend that the last 10 years didn't happen, and pretend that the circumstances that Canada's facing, we've just arrived at in this moment. But the reality is the last 10 years have been a failure in many ways around taxation, business, development, resource development, housing, and now we come to another category, immigration. Canada's immigration system was the envy of the world. We had one of the best immigration systems in the world in Canada, and many people, of course, desire to live here in Canada for many great reasons. But this system has been badly broken, and businesses that rely on having employees are being caught in the crossfire, because by having targets that were way too high that the current government had, now they're trying to adjust those targets because of a crisis that they created. And I looked up some of the figures in anticipation of this question. 2024, there was a backlog of 2 million visa applications. There were also 260,000 unprocessed asylum claims, which is a record high and an increase of over 2,500% since 2015. And the reason I reference 2015 often is that was when Conservatives were in power. It also, fraud and abuse, as you all know when you read the papers or read online, fraud and abuse has run rampant in the international student program. So there's nothing fair or compassionate about having an immigration system where people's dreams cannot be fulfilled. And just like for many Canadians, the dream of home ownership, the dream of a good job, the dream, as I mentioned earlier, of your children being able to do better than you did, that dream is being lost for newcomers as well. Just for example, right now in Canada, there's 20,000 immigrant doctors and 32,000 immigrant nurses that are not working in their field because we don't have a system to assess and to greenlight their credentials, or to get them the bit of support they might need to be able to practice what they've trained for their whole lives. So we need to have a system in Canada that is once again the envy of the world. We need to properly match our immigration levels, and we need to ensure that newcomers and all Canadians have the jobs and are able to take part in the Canadian dream.
Okay, Hans.
Reading on behalf of Hans Johnson, Green Party of Canada. The Green Party believes in immigration policy that reflects both compassion and long-term planning. The party's policies therefore attempt to balance the needs of the economy, both short and long-term, and the needs of the immigrants who come to Canada to make a contribution. As part of that, the policies envision enhancing refugee program to better suit the needs of displaced people who are applying for or accepted as refugees. This includes greatly reducing processing times to minimize the time claimants spend in limbo, better resettlement support, and terminating the Safe Third Country agreement with the United States, who has proven themselves to be an unsafe partner in that program. Immigration is one of Canada's strengths and shouldn't be seen as something that must be stopped or is somehow bad. As the question rightly points out, the Canadian economy depends on immigration to grow. However, there is no sense of having immigrants come to an environment where they cannot afford to live with dignity on the wages offered. In this way, immigration is intimately tied to other policies, such as affordable housing. In addition, the current immigration system tends to ignore the unique needs of each province and regions within the province. GPC is proposing a Council of Canadian Governments, and this is the one issue they would take up, helping to ensure that the immigration policy nationally and locally meet the actual needs of the country as a whole and the individual provinces. The details of this proposed immigration policy changes are too long to get into this answer, so I would encourage people to read the section of the Green Party policy document. The spirit of all those immigration policies, though, is to have an immigration system that is compassionate to immigrants and responsive to the needs of the Canadian economy. Those needs might include reducing staffing shortages in healthcare and long-term care, but also, as yet, underexplored areas such as rural renewal and climate resiliency.
Okay, and Alistair?
I'm kind of glad to go last on this one. I'd like to circle back. One of the other candidates mentioned that Canada used to have the envy of the world immigration system, and we did. I grew up in one of the best multicultural societies on this planet, and it was that way up until Harper reformed it in 2015 from the point system to express entry. Immigration is the elephant in the room in this election. Canada has had the highest population growth in the Western world, and 98% of it has been driven by immigration. Since COVID, the government has brought in more than 1 million people per year. I tend to be short on this, so I just want that to sink in. More people than our province has in it enter our country every year. The idea that the only solution for labor shortages is immigration is selfish and short-sighted. Immigrants are not just workers, but consumers. The worker needs housing, food, healthcare, infrastructure. This creates more demand in other sectors than it relieves in the first. This is why even with over 1 million newcomers per year, we still have labor shortages. Even worse, mass immigration contributes to the stagnation of wages and productivity while increasing the cost of living for all Canadians. Employers favor cheap immigrant labor over capital investment and automation, making our economy less productive and impeding GDP growth per capita. The economic pie is getting bigger, but every one of us in this country is getting a smaller slice for it. It makes every Canadian poorer. We all know it, and we've all seen it. Fast food businesses that used to employ semi-retired people and teens looking for a first job now rely on government-subsidized foreign labor and took those opportunities from Canadians in our own community. Buying Canadian is not enough. We have to hire Canadian and invest in the future of our country if we want our children's lives to be better than our own. Otherwise, we'll continue pushing our housing, healthcare, and infrastructure to a breaking point. And it'll only get worse.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the questions from the chamber. We're going to move on to questions from the public. First question is from Judy Wood.
Given that St. John, New Brunswick and areas are going to be the most vulnerable because of the tariffs, and if they do pipelines, it'll take a while. What I am concerned about from the impression that I got from the national debates, is that the Maritimes and the Atlantic provinces are being forgotten in this election. And what I'm asking each of the candidates, what you would do to rectify that and make the Maritimes and the Atlantic provinces more important to the rest of Canada instead of being ignored.
Okay, so we will give everyone a chance to answer this question. We'll start with Rob.
Well, that's a great question. I think it starts with having strong representation, and a couple things come to mind. I know we have limited time, I think 3 minutes to answer, but a couple stories. One, I was very pleased with something that's near and dear to all of our communities in Funday Royal is volunteer firefighters. And there's always been in the tax code a tax credit against income earned as a volunteer. But it was Atlantic Conservative members of Parliament that impressed upon the late Jim Flaherty, who was our finance minister, and said, you know, in Atlantic Canada, there is no income that our volunteer firefighters receive. It is, they volunteer their time, their gas, their vehicle, and they have no income to offset. So that's why I was very proud of the day in St. Martin's, New Brunswick, right here in Funday Royal, when the finance minister came down and announced the new volunteer firefighters tax credit. That's because Atlantic members of Parliament spoke up. I'm concerned a bit. I had served in the past as Minister of ACOA, which is very involved in many of the projects I mentioned earlier in my remarks around our Atlantic communities. Ever since its inception, the Minister of ACOA had always been an Atlantic Canadian, either under Conservative governments or Liberal governments. And I was pleased to have been able to serve in that portfolio. But it's very alarming that right now the Minister for ACOA is not an Atlantic Canadian, it's someone from the GTA. And that to me says that Atlantic Canada is not on the map. One of the marquee investments that, in my view, was showing Atlantic Canada punching above its weight was the Energy East pipeline. That was all about Atlantic Canada. It was all about Atlantic Canada being part of a stronger Canada, about our capabilities right here in New Brunswick. So to see that project die is something that I certainly took very personal, and I'm very glad that our party now is committed to, if we form government, to moving forward on those kind of really important Atlantic initiatives. Thank you.
Okay, next, Alistair, give you a chance to answer the question.
I would like to increase Atlantic Canada's representation in our country on multiple levels. Number one, I think rather than looking at piping oil from Alberta out here, we should look at exploitation of Newfoundland's oil reserves, which, although they're smaller than Alberta's, can be extracted much cleaner with lower environmental impact. Here locally in New Brunswick, I think we should really lean in to our natural resource management and promote ecotourism and bring people into our beautiful province to see it. As well, on that note, I think we should end the spraying of glyphosates on Crown lands, which has horrible downwind effects on our health. I believe we should also protect our fisheries against poaching, particularly some international poaching that's been going on as of late in the Alver fisheries.
Okay, Bill.
So promoting Atlantic Canada. We have great natural resources here. We have beautiful scenery. We need to have more Canadians coming to see our province. Mr. Carney has proposed that children under 18 can travel with their parents free on Via Rail, and all of our national parks will be free for the months of July and August to encourage Canadians to travel and see their country. Our part of the country has a unique maritime feel where there's so many more things to see than are in the rest of the country. The Canadians will want to come to the East Coast now that it'll be more affordable for them and see Atlantic Canada. I think I agree with Alistair that our trade and our tourism needs to be promoted because we have something that the rest of Canada doesn't see. Central Ontario is houses and streets and roads everywhere. Out here, we have the green space, we have the animals, we have fish in the water and clean water. But the glyphosates too, the spraying of trees to kill deciduous trees, in Quebec they have a solution. They hire students to cut down trees. So I think we need to look at everything to protect one of the most valuable resources in New Brunswick and Atlantic Canada is the nature. Not polluting anymore, keeping it clean and moving forward that way. As far as getting a pipeline, I'm not so sure I'm in full agreement of a pipeline without Quebec on board. And the Premier of Quebec is starting to bend towards it, but the head of the Bloc Québécois is absolutely totally against getting a pipeline through. So we need to either talk to Quebecers first, talk to Indigenous peoples, because to get a pipeline across through Northern Ontario, we'll be going through almost exclusively Indigenous land, and we need to make sure we have that right of way. I would rather see us invest more in solar, invest more in green energy, wind turbines, to keep our country, our provinces and Atlantic Canada clean moving forward. I think that we have to also remember that Mr. Trudeau brought in the new ships in the Irving shipyard in Halifax, and that brought great business out here, and we can expand that. We can expand that to create a new fleet that can protect our shores. Thank you.
Our next question from the public is from Jim Sackville.
The Conservative policy of, more oil to solve problems really seems to me to be a bit of a backwards look. What I say up on the screen is world scientists and the Pope have called climate change by burning fossil fuels as an existential threat to human existence. So the Conservatives' policy to drill and pipe oil to be shipped, to be burned, seems to me, I question it. So that is my question. Is there not another solution?
So this question was for Rob Moore.
Canada represents 1.6% of global emissions. And a short-sighted way to look at that would be if we shut Canada off, if we shut down everything that's happening in New Brunswick, everything, our pulp and paper mill, our oil refinery, shut down what's happening in Saskatchewan, Alberta, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, everywhere across the country. The thinking from some people is that global emissions would be reduced by 1.6%. The fact of the matter is that is absolutely false. Every drop that we do not produce in Canada is going to be made up somewhere else. Every bit of energy that we turn off, China will fire up another coal-fired plant and increase global emissions. So I take a different view. I look at it that the world needs more of Canada, not less of Canada, that we need to develop our resources. We've seen where the last 10 years have led us. It's led to impoverishment. It's led to, this morning when I saw people lined up at a food bank, it's led to conversations where people say, I don't see a future for my children. It's led to us being dependent, more so than any other country, on trade with the United States, instead of being strong and being able to stand on our own. So Canada needs to continue to develop its natural resources. We need to be energy independent. We need to be supplying our energy to the world. We need to be displacing dirty energy produced by China from coal plants. And, we heard the same thing about the carbon tax. We were told that if you were against the carbon tax, you were against the environment. It's not true. You can be in favor of a clean environment for all Canadians, but also be in favor of Canadians being able to make ends meet month to month. And if you had asked a Liberal 2 months ago, they would have said, if you're against the carbon tax, you're against the environment. But now when they want your vote, they've taken the conservative policy and they've reduced the carbon tax, or the consumer carbon tax, to 0%. You'd have to really be willfully blind to think that the same party that said they would cap the carbon tax at 50 cents per $50 per barrel and then increased it to 170 would keep the promise to eliminate the carbon tax. So only a conservative government is going to stand up for the environment and natural resources and helping Canadians make ends meet.
Okay, thank you. So our next question from the public, hopefully I pronounce this right, is from Tristan Zibala.
When I hear that parties want to bury CO2, it sounds completely disconnected from nature and common sense. Trees absorb CO2. They're nature's built-in solution. Instead of spending billions on unproven technology to trap and bury carbon, why not focus on planting forests, protecting green spaces, supporting regenerative farming, and encouraging natural CO2 absorption? Sorry, I can't see the red. Does your party support more natural solutions to environmental issues, or is it still pushing to use these costly artificial fixes?
Okay, we'll start with Alistair on this one.
I'm entirely agreed to that. I believe rather than increasing government regulation for policies that do very little to benefit the environment or Canadians, we should put our focus into real environmental protectionism. Protecting our fisheries, protecting our forests, protecting the animals and the biodiversity within our region. Most importantly, we need to put a stop to chemical pollution and runoff in our waterways. That's causing algae blooms that are the #1 threat to waterways in New Brunswick, aside from invasive species, which also must be dealt with by the government. Department of Natural Resource officers must be empowered and tasked with protecting our waterways from these invasive species.
Okay, Bill?
Say I totally agree as well. We can plant trees, we can grow food. Grass is very small. Grow broccoli, grow cauliflower, grow things that are bigger, they will capture more carbon. But we need more trees. We need trees to line our farm fields too, so we mitigate soil erosion, and that's something that farmers used to do, but then we've expanded roads into the farm and cut down the windrow of trees, and we need to help them get them back. So we protect that. Runoff, we need to protect excessive runoff, and the climate change has certainly caused excessive runoff. And the storms we've had lately, the windstorm we had the other day, where 60,000 users in New Brunswick were without power. It shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be happening. We should be making sure that the infrastructure is clean and protected, and I agree. Trees need to be planted. Carbon capture is not a good way, although Alberta is constantly saying that's the best way to offset anything caused by oil. I think we need to have different solutions, have scientists involved in finding different solutions and generating more of our power through a clean method. Thank you.
Okay, Rob.
Rating is something that Canada's been hesitant to do over the last 10 years, is to speak about the attributes we do have. We are a giant carbon sink with all the trees that we have. We have more trees than anybody else, but we don't recognize that. We've had a government that is too quick to throw Canadian business, Canadian resources, and Canadian consumers under the bus in the name of the environment. And we should be talking more about trees. We know that the current government made a commitment to plant 1 billion trees. And we know that, last I heard, that none of those trees were planted. At the time when they announced, I had people calling my office, how do we get our trees? But that program never even got off the ground, and those trees were not planted. But we've been too eager to throw consumers to the whims of this government. We have a government that wants to tell you what you can watch, what kind of straw you can have, what kind of bag you can take from the grocery store, what kind of car you can drive. And I don't believe in that. I believe that Canadians should be able to drive the kind of car they want to drive, that we should be developing our resources, that we should be proud of the attributes we have, we should be proud of our country. And I truly believe what I said earlier, that when it comes to the environment, the world needs not less of Canada. The world needs more of Canada. And we've had a government that has just been dampening out any opportunities that we have, and we need a government that says to entrepreneurs, people that make up the Hampton Chamber of Commerce and the Sussex Chamber, we need to say, we value you. We want you to invest. We want you to grow your business. We want you to take the risks that you take, and we don't want to punish you when you take risks by increasing capital gains, increasing income tax, increasing the carbon tax. So I think what you're suggesting around Canada's forestry is an important point that we should be making more noise about when we're talking about Canada's place in the world, in the international carbon emissions world that we're living in.
Is the Chamber of Commerce fact-checking what this word says? A lot of that is absolutely untrue.
Would you like to comment on that, Vanessa?
No, but I'd like to call to order, because that is not something that we are accepting comments from the floor like that.
I'd like to hear one thing I said that wasn't absolutely true.
Trees planted.
What about trees?
You said the program didn't start when trees planted. They did not meet the part.
Okay, we're going to move on. This isn't a back and forth. That's not how this is structured. So we'll move on to the next question. If you have a question, you can submit it. Our next question is from Mark Connell.
Where does each candidate stand with regard to the genocide that's taking place in Palestine that the Israelis and the Americans are carrying out?
Okay, we'll start with you, Bill.
Well, I believe that every human life has value. The people of Palestine are not who should be the target here. The terrorists should be. And the Israelis have one of the most sophisticated militaries. They could very easily, with not much more risk to themselves, go into Palestine and find the terrorists and get rid of them. They should not be indiscriminately bombing hospitals, schools, or other big areas where people live, and to bomb places where people have gone because their houses are gone, their infrastructure is gone, there's no roads. It's just not the way it should be carried out. They need to use their intelligence and the military they have again to go in and find the terrorists and take them out that way, not by taking out 25 civilians for every one terrorist.
Okay, Rob.
Every effort has to be made to protect innocent lives on both sides. We get that question without any discussion around October 8th, when one of the worst terrorist attacks in our lifetime took place, when Hamas terrorists went over the border in Israel and indiscriminately killed Israelis, dragged families out of their home, massacred them, kidnapped them, inflicted all kinds of evil on them. And it's impossible to look at the current context without acknowledging what happened that day. Almost immediately, people were calling on Israel to show restraint immediately. And the fact of the matter is Israel is entitled to respond to a terrorist attack, but we've been calling on peaceful solution. We've been calling on all steps to be taken, no matter what war zone or conflict zone we are in, including what's happening in Ukraine, that all steps should be taken to avoid innocent lives.
Okay, Alistair.
this one I'll actually fact check for the gentleman just because the attack was on October 7th. And although the initial response was understandable given what occurred, I believe it has dragged on for far too long and far too many innocents have been killed. I think Canada, our leaders, should unite to put all pressure they can on achieving peace in the region.
Okay, so we're moving on to another question from Tristan Zabala.
Just before I read my question, I do want to say one thing. When you talked about immigrants who are doctors, shouldn't be driving taxis and we should do what we can to help them. Well, I'm a teacher and I have to jump through hoops and spend so much money to teach in other provinces in Canada. So maybe we should help Canadians too. I should be able to teach anywhere in Canada. I'm Canadian certified. So I just wanted to make that comment. Yes, immigrants coming in who are educated and who might be doctors, and we need doctors. So yes, I agree with that, but we also need to consider Canadians. And that goes right into this. I'm deeply concerned about the scale of immigration into Canada. It feels like we're losing our Canadian identity and cultural cohesion as more people arrive without necessarily integrating. We're also seeing serious pressure on housing, healthcare, and infrastructure. Yet the major parties continue to push for even more immigration. Why do you not see this as a problem? And will your party commit to putting Canadian citizens' needs first, especially when it comes to housing and cultural integrity, before bringing in more people? And one comment about integrating. I have taught in 8 different countries. I have lived and taught in 8 different countries. I respected their culture. I did not push my Canadian identity on them. So why is it that they can come here? And in schools, we can't have Christmas concerts anymore. They have to be winter concerts. We're Canadians who celebrate Christmas. They've taken away a lot of our identity. I did not do that in any of the countries I lived in. I respected their culture. And I feel that Canada has taken that away from Canadians. The Canadian government has taken it away by allowing them sacrificial slaughters in public places. How is that okay in Canada? We have animal rights here. And again, I'm just stating the fact that people, when they go and live in another country, should respect that culture. Thank you for listening.
Did you want to start with that one, Rob?
Addressing your initial comments, that is one of the challenges that we're facing with it's more difficult in some cases to work in a different province than it is to work in a different country. It's more difficult to export some products from New Brunswick to Nova Scotia than it is to export products from New Brunswick internationally. So you're familiar with like the Red Seal program for some professions. We are committed to bringing in a Blue Seal program that would recognize and work with the provinces to recognize those credentials that you're talking about. Because some of the demands that we need, whether it's building housing, new construction, all of these things, we need to be able to fill them as best we can from one province to the next, and recognizing individuals' credentials to work from one province into another is something that we should all pull together on, and the federal government can take a leadership role in this. That hasn't been done up until this point, but there's a lot of work that can be done. And you may have seen recently announcements between, I think it was Nova Scotia and Ontario, and New Brunswick is talking to other provinces about what they can do for recognizing those different credentials. On the issue of immigration, I've already mentioned that this current government has broken our immigration system. Our immigration system was the envy of the world. It has taken 10 years and of mismanagement to get to the point where we're at. But Conservatives are committed to making sure we have an immigration system that meets the needs of Canadians, Canadian businesses, that newcomers to Canada are able to have the opportunities that all of us want as Canadians, which is to be able to have a job, be able to have a family, be able to buy a home. Some of those goals that were part of the Canadian dream that we're seeing slipping away for many young people. That's something that only a major change in policy is going to address, making Canada competitive again, making our economy work for Canadians again, lowering the tax burden on all Canadians, making our streets safer. All of those things didn't happen overnight, but it's going to require a change in direction to fix them.
Okay, Alistair?
I like the majority of your question, and I want to say that the PPC is in fact committed to putting Canadians first, especially when it comes to housing. And we want to protect our culture. Canadian culture is being swept away. Nowadays, you can ask someone what it means to be a Canadian, and many of them can't even answer. As another candidate has mentioned before, the immigration system currently has a backlog of almost 2 million people, coupled with almost 5 million visas that are set to expire within the next 4 years. The People's Party is committed to imposing a moratorium on immigration while the backlog is dealt with, and subsequently reducing immigration to a sane level of 100 to 150,000 people per year, allowing them to integrate fully into Canadian society, to enrich it, rather than simply dispersing into ethnic ghettos within our country, as we see cropping up in provinces like Ontario and British Columbia, where they don't integrate with our culture.
Okay, Bill.
Well, I have a different point of view on this. I love to experience world culture, and a lot of Canadians can't travel around the world, so some of these little pockets of different culture is a good learning experience for Canadians. I agree that Canadians need to come here and embrace our basic values of being caring, being compassionate, being there for your neighbors and your friends, but to expect someone to leave a culture that is thousands of years old, older than Canadian culture, unless you're talking about Indigenous peoples who were first here. So our Indigenous people, their culture, we did our very best to wipe it out, but we need to realize that we can't allow other people to come and wipe out the culture that's here now, but we need to make sure that we actually listen to people when they come here, talk to them, let them know what the values are here, let them know that Sharia law is not practiced in this country, that our legal system has to be respected if you come here, and we need to make sure that women, children are safe in our country, because some countries they come from, the women are not treated as we treat ours. We treat ours as equals, and they need to be treated as equals when they come here. And I hope that might be part of what you were looking at, because there are some cultures where I've witnessed friends of mine in other cultures that have been beat up just because they were women. And we can't have women feeling threatened when they come here. We need to protect them. We need to protect their children. And we need to actually maybe we need a course for new Canadians coming, that they might have to learn both official languages, depending where they live. If they live in a bilingual province, they learn both. They live in Quebec, they'll learn French first, because there's been a huge issue in Quebec with people not learning French. But something as simple as a head covering, I don't think should ever be restricted on somebody. That doesn't change who we are as people. Thank you.
Okay, so that wraps up our questions from the public, and we're going to move on to a summary from each candidate. So each candidate will get 3 minutes, and we're going to start with Alistair.
I just wanted to thank the Sussex Chamber of Commerce for bringing us all out tonight, as well as the other candidates for providing their opinions and their political stances on it. I believe I've said about everything I came to say, so I just wanted to thank everybody for hearing us out, and you all have a lovely night.
And I too want to thank the Chambers of Commerce for allowing us to be here tonight. I'm a little under the weather. I was out in the rain canvassing all day Saturday, and it seems to have hit me today. Anyway, I believe we have one of the best countries in the world. It's not broken. Canada is not broken. Canadians are not broken. Yes, we have slipped a little. We need to do some work to make our country better, but we are not broken, never will be. We'll never be a 51st state. We will stand up to Donald Trump and make sure that Canada will lead the world, will be a better place because of what Donald Trump's done to us. And contrary to what happened in the Second World War, where people tried to placate Mr. Hitler, we will not do that with Donald Trump. We'll meet him face on, and we'll keep Canada strong. Thank you.
Well, thank you to the Chambers and for all of you that have taken time out of your evening to be here and listen to the candidates. Thank you as well to my fellow candidates for their participation and for taking part in this election campaign. You know, the Canada that we know and love, the New Brunswick that we know and love, we can have that. We can have that feeling where our streets are safer. I know many people do not feel as safe as they did 10 years ago. When we look around, many of us didn't lock our cars at night. Many of us didn't lock our houses at night. Those days are changing very rapidly. When you look at Canada as a place where the promise of working hard, playing by the rules, and you could afford to have a family, you could afford to have a vehicle, you could afford to have a house. That dream is slipping away from people, even the prospect of having a good job. And we know that these last number of years have been very tough. We know whether it's crime rates being up, taxation being up, whether it's food bank use being up, all of those things are challenges that New Brunswickers are facing right now. So the consequences of this election are very real. It's a decision to continue on as we have been for the last 10 years. I know Mr. Carney has said, well, hey, I just got here. Well, we all know he didn't just get here. He was an economic advisor to Prime Minister Trudeau for 5 years. The team that he currently has of ministers, about 90% of them were ministers under the previous regime. The policies are last-minute bait and switch policies, adopting conservative policies. Conservatives have been listening. We listened when when Canadians said we want safer streets. We listened when Canadians said we want to end the carbon tax. We're listening when you say you want to be able to afford a home, when you're struggling to make ends meet, when you'd like to pay less tax and have a less greedy government. When I was in Sussex recently, meeting with the Sussex fishing game, and we heard from them where the fishermen, the firearms owners, the hunters in this region are tired of being targeted every time crime goes up in Toronto. The current government comes out with new laws against law-abiding citizens. So a conservative government is going to stand up for lower taxes, stand up for protecting our communities, stand up for investing in our natural resources and exporting our natural resources to a world that wants them. And I would be very pleased and honored to be able to be a part of that as your member of parliament. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you again to the other candidates, and I hope you all have a great rest of your evening.
Okay, I'm going to invite Michael Boudreau back up for the Chamber's closing remarks.
Okay, thank you again to all the candidates for coming out tonight. We know it's not easy to stand in front of a crowd of people and explain your platforms, but you did it, and you did it very well. Thank you very much. We're also grateful to the Chamber Ambassador Greg Keith for moderating tonight's evening. We also want to acknowledge Helena McDermott from our Chamber Board. She's down there in the corner. She's keeping everyone on track tonight with the timing and making sure people stay on schedule. A big thank you to the tech crew students for keeping everything running smoothly behind the scenes. Their involvement and support were greatly appreciated. I can't see any up there, but to everyone who attended, your engagement is a vital part in the democratic process. Events like this are made stronger by active, informed communities, and your participation helps ensure that local priorities remain front and center during this election. On behalf of the Sussex District Chamber of Commerce and the Hampton Area Chamber of Commerce, thank you for joining us. We look forward to continuing these conversations and working with elected officials to build a thriving, resilient region. For all, safe travels and good night, everyone.